welcome to another video. In this video we're going to be picking up from the last video, from the export from Blender to Unreal Engine video. This is part 2 where we're going to import and set up the vehicle in Unreal Engine. First we're going to start off with a blank project. So on the games I'm going to go to blank, and then I'm going to call my op_tutorial, and then it's going to create. So now with the project open, first thing we're going to do is add the chaos plugin. So we're going to head over to edit, project settings. Oh no, wrong place. It's plugins. We're going to look for chaos, and then we're going to select the chaos vehicle plugin. Yes, and then restart. So now we're back in Unreal Engine. We can close the plugins, and then the next thing we're going to do is actually create a new level, because sometimes this level doesn't exactly work properly. So here in the content, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call this maps. Open up the maps, level, and then we're going to call this tutorial, and then we're going to open it up, just say select. And then now with our new level, we're going to head over to the selection mode. We're going to go ahead landscape, and then whatever it is, we're just going to create a new one. We just need it temporarily for the video. And then with that done, I'm going to head back into selection, head over to window. I'm going to go here by environment light mixer, and then just select everything there is to select. Now we have a basic light setup. I forgot to, oh okay, I thought I forgot to actually press create. So now we have our level, we have our basic lighting. So now we're going to bring in the vehicle, head back to content, gonna select a create a folder. I'm going to call this one vehicle, and then in the vehicle folder we're going to import the car. So I'm going to go import, and then mine is under here, tutorial. So as you can tell, mine has the front wheel and front wheel corrected. As I stated in the previous video, I did make a mistake, so I went back and corrected it. So we're just going to select corrected, and then we're going to open. And then here, don't just import, you actually have to go here under carbon meshes. It says force all mesh as type. We need to set it to skeletal mesh because we didn't use the plugin. We need to set it up to the skeletal mesh. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look for materials, and import materials. I don't want the materials imported, and I'm going to import. Okay, now the import is done. Now we gotta remove a couple of things. So what we are going to remove is the physics assets for the wheels. We don't need those. We'll just remove those ones, and then just delete the physics asset. And then after that, what we are going to do is we are going to set up the physics asset for the vehicle. So just open up the physics asset, and then we're going to head over to the vehicle skeleton mesh. Gonna right click and then say create, and then animation blueprint. Just leave it as is. We're gonna open that, and then we're gonna leave this alone for now. I'm gonna do the physics asset first. So if you imported your car with the previous video, link down in the description, this is how your car should be imported and look while it's in the physics asset. So you only have one thing, and then over here it should only be the body, whatever you call it. I forgot to rename mine, so it's called bird. And then over here by the gear, we're gonna select that, and then go to show all bones. So as you can see here, we have all of the bones. I forgot to rename my calipers. See, now I'm gonna have to do some back and forth, but hopefully you rename yours to FL_caliper so that you know which caliper is the right caliper to go to with which bone. So we're gonna do the body. So we only have the body, and then if you didn't do your scaling properly, if you want to find out whether it was correct or not, head over here by primitive type, and then you set it to either single or multi-convex hull, and then you just deselect the auto-oriented bone, and then you generate all bodies. So after the collision has been generated, if you generate it using the single convex hull or the multi-convex hull, and the generated body doesn't fit the body, and it just looks like nothing is there, that means you didn't do your scaling properly. The way you would most likely find your scaling is somewhere down at the bottom. So like somewhere here, usually down here with a small version. So then that means that the scaling that you did in Blender wasn't done correctly, and you're gonna have to go and redo it and then re-import the car. So that's how you would find out if your scaling is incorrect. If it doesn't cover the body. and then we're going to save. Then we're going to head over to the blueprint. But before we continue on with the car, we're just going to go set up the inputs real quick. Just create a new folder in the content folder. So folder. Then we're going to say inputs. Then we're going to open the inputs. And then in here, we're going to right click, head over to input. Then we're going to get an input action. And then the first one we're going to create is IA_throttle. So we're just going to do a basic setup. So it's just going to be a throttle, the brake, and the steering for now. And then in other videos, I'll cover how to do a full setup. So we're going to open up the throttle, and then under the value type, we're going to change it from digital bool to axis 1D. And then we're going to save it. And then we're going to close that. And then we're going to take the throttle, Control D, rename it to brake, and then Control D the brake, and then rename this one to steering, because they're all going to be the same. They all use axis 1D, so after you created the throttle, you can just duplicate it and then rename it, and everything will be fine. We're going to save that. And then in the same folder, we're going to right click, go back to input, and then input mapping context, and then IMC underscore inputs, and then I'm going to open up the input context under mappings. I'm going to add a new mapping. The first one we're adding is the throttle, and then we're going to expand this. And then on the keyboard, I'm going to use the directional arrows, but you can use WSAD if you want. Click on the keyboard and then click on the button on your keyboard that you want to assign there, and then we're going to make another mapping. Just close this. The next one is going to be brake. Then we're going to press use this one as down, and then we're going to create another mapping, and then this one's going to be the steering. And then for the steering, we're going to have two inputs. The first input is going to be right, because in the way Android determines steering, right is positive and then left is negative. And then by the steering, just going to click on the plus over here, and then we're going to click the keyboard, then use left, and then to get it to go between left and right is under the modifiers. It says 0 array element. We're going to select the plus, and then under here we're going to choose the negate modifier. So this is going to turn it into a negative. So that is now how you get the inputs set up. And then with that, we are done with the inputs. Just going to close that, head back to the main menu under content, gonna right click, blueprint, and then we're going to select the player controller, and then we're going to call this PC, I'll call it tutorial, it's fine. And then we're going to open it up, head into the event graph, and then in the event graph, what we're going to do is drag off, and then we're going to say set show mouse cursor, set it to false, and then we're going to drag off, and then we're going to look for, I think it's set input mode game only, and then by the player controller we're going to drag off and then look for self, and then that's going to compile this. And then the next thing we're going to look for is the enhanced input. So just in a free space, just right click and then look for enhanced. I'm going to go down a bit, and then here you're going to see you have two, so we're just going to select both. I'm going to show you the difference. So as you can see, there is a difference between the two. There's one without an input socket, and then the one with the input socket. What you want is the one without the input socket, just an output socket. You don't want the one with the input. So this one is the incorrect one. We just want this one. And then from here we're going to drag off and then look for add mapping context, and then connect the execution pin. And then under the mapping context, we're going to look for the IMC inputs which was created. So after adding the add mapping context, that is it for the inputs. We can compile and save. Then we're going to close this. And then the last thing we're going to add is in the context folder again, I'm going to right click, blueprint cross, and then we're going to add a game mode base. And then this one we're going to call GM tutorial. And then this one we're just going to open it, and then we're going to close it again, and then we're going to open it again, so we can see this screen instead of the other one. And then when it says player controller class, we're going to select the PC tutorial, and then that is it we have to do for now. I'm going to compile, save, close this, head back in here. Then over by the world settings, which says game mode override, we select the GM tutorial we just created. And then what we're going to need to do is add a player start. So we're gonna, on here by the cube with the green plus, select that. And then in the search, I'm gonna look for a player start, and then just select the player start, head to the details, reset its location values so that it's in the center of the world, and then I'm just gonna drag it up so that it's now there. So now we have everything set up. Then I'm gonna passive, and then now we're gonna head back to the vehicle. So back into the vehicle folder, we are going to create the blueprint. So just right click, blueprint, all classes, and then look for wheeled vehicle pawn. Select that, and then we're gonna call this BP. We're sticking with the tutorial. And then open up the blueprint, head back, and then we're going to create the wheel. So right click in the folder, blueprint class, and then we'll look for chaos. And what I'm looking for is the chaos vehicle wheel. Select that, and then select it, and then this is going to be BP underscore front wheels, and then control D, and then just rename that from front wheels to rear wheels. Open up these two as well, actually open and close it, and then open it again because we want this menu and not the other menu. So just talk about them, and then we're gonna save. So now we're done with the physics asset, but I'm gonna leave mine open because I did not rename my calipers. So I need to reference these so that I know which caliper I'm gonna be looking for. So what we're gonna do is the animation blueprint now. So in the animation blueprint, we're gonna head over to class settings first. Under the parent class, we're going to change this to vehicle animation instance, and then what we're going to look for is right click and then ref mesh, then the mesh space ref pose, drag that off to the side. We're going to need quite a little bit of space, and then from here we're going to drag off and then look for wheel. We're going to look for the wheel controller for wheel vehicle, and then so far it's pretty much the same. And then now where the difference comes in is we're going to drag off from the wheel controller and then look for apply a percentage of rotation. So this is what we're going to use for the calipers, well, particularly for the rotation of said calipers. So with this selected, the target bone is going to be the caliper, and the source bone is going to be the socket or the empty we created in Blender. So the target bone for here would be your calipers, and over here. So I'm going to start with the front left caliper. That would be caliper 0, and then the source bone is going to be the front left. And then don't forget to set the multiplier to 1, because if you don't, then it will not apply the rotation to the caliper. It will simply just not do anything. And then another thing to note is the rotation axis to refer. You need to set this to Z, because you only want it to apply when the car is steering and not when anything else is happening. And then we're going to select it and then control D and duplicate it, and then we're just going to change the target bone and the source bone. So the next source bone is going to be the front right, and then your target bone is going to be your front right caliper, which for me is the third caliper. See, this is why it's important to rename the things accordingly. So for me it's this one, and then that's the calipers, and then we need them to also move up and down if, say for example, the car is in the air and comes back to the ground. So we're going to drag off from the second percentage of rotation, and then we'll look for copy. Then we're going to copy bone, and then here we're going to do the same thing, but we only want the copy translation. So select the copy translation, and then the source bone is going to be the front left. Just going to do it in the same order because I already memorized those ones. And then we're going to duplicate it, connect it, and then just change it to the front right, and then that one, and then duplicate this one. And then we're going to connect that up, and then the next one is the rear left, and then I need to go see which one it is. So it's number 1, and then your rear left, and then for the last time, duplicate it, connect it, the rear right, and then that would be the last one for that. And then after that, we then take from the last copy bone and then just connect that straight to the output pose, and then that is it for the animation blueprint now. So that's how the animation gets set up so that the calipers also work. So this is set up in this way because my car in particular, or the car I'm using in the tutorial video, has 4 calipers. But if your car only has 2 calipers, then you only gonna need 2 copy bones to copy the translation, which is the up and down for the bone. But you are gonna need the apply a percentage of rotation regardless of how many calipers your car has, because your car will have calipers in the front. So you need those to still move. But then, depending on how many calipers your car has in total, you might only need 2 copy bones or 4 copy bones. So that's it for the animation blueprint. I'm going to save that. Now we can close the animation blueprint and the physics asset. We don't need those anymore. So now we're going to work on the blueprint. So in the blueprint, under the mesh, we are going to select the animation class. The animation class will be the one which is created, which would be the vehicle body corrected or whatever you named yours. And then the skeletal mesh is going to be the vehicle. So this is how it looks. So you just have the body, and then to get the wheels in, you are going to need to select the mesh, and then click on the add, and then look for skeletal mesh, and then we'll name this to front right underscore wheel, and then we'll select the wheel, the skeletal mesh, and then we're going to follow the skeletal mesh, and we're going to select the front wheel. So the front wheel, as you can see, comes in at the world center, like how we exported it. And then to get it to attach to the body, we now have to then head over down to actually up from the skeletal. We selected skeletal mesh up, and then we set socket, parent socket. We are then going to select on the folder with the magnifying glass, and then we're going to select the front left. So now we have it set up on the empty or the socket on the front left. If you import the wheels and say for example they are at a let's see 90-degree angle like this, that means you didn't apply your rotation yet again, and your car is going to move sideways instead of towards the front. So you're going to have to go and back into Blender and then apply rotation for the car before you export it. But if it comes in at 0 and it's facing the same direction as the car, that means you applied your rotation and everything is set. So now I'm going to do the other wheels as well. So we're just going to select the front right wheel. Oh wait, I think this was front right, and I think I selected the front left. Okay, I selected the wrong one. Okay, front right, so this one. So it doesn't matter if it's facing backwards like this, it's just so long as it's facing the same direction as the car. We can always just change the rotation from 0 to 180. That's fine. It's only a problem if it comes in at a 90-degree angle to what the car's body looks like, and then it just means that you're gonna have to re-import everything. So we're just gonna move on with the other wheels, Control D, and then we are gonna name this one front left. Then we're just gonna select the front left, just undo this because we effectively duplicated the wheel. So you just undo that, and then we are going to duplicate this one. Then we're gonna call it rear right. No, rear right. And then this one, we're gonna change it from the front wheel to the rear wheel, and then attach that to the rear right, and then change the socket rotation to 180, and then final time the rear left, reset the rotation, and then set the parent socket to the rear left. So now we have all the wheels attached back onto the car. I'm gonna compile, save, head over to the event graph. On the event begin play, we are going to drag in the vehicle movement component, control, drag it in. Sorry, not the real wheel as well. Drag off from here, and then cross to chaos wheeled vehicle movement component, and then connect that, and then from the as chaos vehicle movement component, drag off and then promote to variable, and then that's everything. And then before we move on yet again, we're just gonna go set up the wheels real quick. So for this, we are going to drag in the blueprint, drag it in like so, and then if you have anything selected in the level and you press Alt J, go into top view, and then I'm just gonna check the measurements for the wheels. I think I'll work on the front wheels, so start with the front. I'm just gonna select the snapping, and then just measure out the wheel. It is 63. So front wheel radius 63 divided by 2. And the reason why we're dividing by 2 is because we just got the diameter and it's asking for the radius. The radius is half the diameter, so we divide by 2. And then the wheel width, I think this car's front is 265, so it's 26.5. We're gonna leave all that the same, leave that. We're gonna set this to 3, just requires some traction. Affected by brake, affected by engine, handbrake, no, none of that. And then we're gonna set affected by steering to true. And then everything else we're gonna leave as is. Compile and save. And then the rear wheels, we need to then see what this one is. Set this one is 68. So we go 68 divided by 2. And then the rear wheels on this one I think it's at 34.5. And then we're gonna set this to 3.5, that's fine. And then we need to set affected by engine to true. And then everything else will be the same. Compile, save. Oh, one thing I did forget is under the axle type, I forgot to set this one. So from undefined to rear, compile, save, and then just go and open up the front wheels. So we define this one from undefined to front. Sorry about that, forgot. It's fine, we're done with that. Now we can finish off with the vehicle. So we're going to select the vehicle movement component, and then now we're going to set up the vehicle. So we're going to go down, double check everything. Okay, nothing yet. So first one, wheel setup. Suspension able, true. Wheel friction able, true. Wheel setup. We have 4 wheels, and then we gotta set these up. So just expand everything, and then wheel class, the BP front wheels, and then the bone is FR, I think. Just gonna go back into the physics asset real quick. Oh, and then in the level again, if you press Alt G, then you go back into perspective mode. So I'm just gonna open up my physics asset real quick. Just wanna make sure that I get the bones in the correct order. Oh no, it's FL first. Okay, so we need to start with FL. FL. Alright, so I'll set it up in the correct order. Front wheels. Next one, front wheels, that would be FR. And then rear wheels, and then that would be RL. And then the last one, rear, and then RR. Okay, that's fine. The mechanical setup, engine setup. I'm going to expand on these. Torque curve. Create external curve. We're just gonna call this. TC for torque curve, and then save, and then open it. And then here we're just gonna set the car's torque curve real quick. So for the sake of the tutorial, I'm just gonna add 3 points. The first point is going to exist at the idle, which is 1000. The value is going to be 0.4444. And then if you just select the map with nothing selected, press F, then you get to see the whole thing. And then we're gonna select the second one. Did I only add 2? I think I might have only added 2. The next one is going to be, I think it's 6250, and then add 1. And then I'm gonna press F again. And then the last one, where would it be? I'll set it at 9250, and then this one's gonna be 0.8333. So the way the torque curve works is you can either set it up mimicking the actual values of the car, or you can set it up the way I did, where you actually use a percentage. So where the car hits its max torque, the RPM is on the left, the percentage is on the right. So at 6,250 RPM, the car is hitting 100% of its torque value. That's why it's set to a value of 1. And then at idle speed, it's at 44%, but 0.44, because it's scaling from 0 to 1, 0 being 0, and then 1 being 100. And then the fall off at the end at 9250, We then have that one. Obviously that's just numbers that I'm using. I'm just pulling them out of my head. But if you have the car's torque curve, then you can use that as reference to then create your car's torque curve instead. So we're done with the torque curve. Now we're going to head back into the vehicle blueprint. And then I'm actually just going to go pull up my notes on this car because I want to set it up correctly. Okay, so now we have the notes. As you can see, we have the notes here on the side. So max torque is actually at 6750. I'm not going to go change that. I'm going to leave it alone for now. I'm actually just going to use the rest of the information. So max torque is 900. The max RPM, it looked like it's at 11,000. The idle is 1,000. And then these ones, we're not going to bother with them. We'll leave them alone. Differential setup, differential type, it's a rear-wheel drive car. So rear-wheel drive. Front rear, so the lower the number, the more the car will be front bias. The higher the number, the more the car will be rear bias. So since the rear-wheel drive, I'm going to set this to 1. Then we're going to use the automatic transmission, automatic reverse. The final ratio, let's see, final ratio will be 437, 4.37. The car has 7 speed, so we need to remove one of these. Delete, so now we have 7. Okay, so it's 37.7, 37.7, 21.85, 16.26, 12.86, 10.28, 8.39, and then 6.93. So we have the gear setup and then the reverse. We need to remove one. It gives you 2 by default. So just remove one of these, delete. And then the reverse is 27.91. So we have that set up. The change of RPM for the car is 9250, which is also, it's actually where the red line is, and your torque curve should only go up to where the car's red line is, because generally a car doesn't go beyond its red line unless it's a modified car. But then, even if your car is modified, it will have a red line, just different from what the speedometer probably shows. I'm gonna save that. And then the change down RPM, I'm gonna set mine to 3500. I'm not gonna mess with the gear change time. This is mostly just in seconds again. So if you set it to 1, it would make like a manual transmission, which would be 1 second, and then you would go lower and lower depending on what type of transmission you want to have. I'm going to leave mine at 0.4. The transmission efficiency will be how much of the max torque will be lost power transfer assembly from the engine to the wheels. So the higher the efficiency, the less power is lost. So currently the efficiency says that from the engine to the wheels, 90% of the power will be transferred and only 10% will be lost. So depending on how you want to set yours up, that will be up to your discretion. And then the steering setup, we're gonna leave this as is as well. You have options here like angle ratio, single angle, Ackerman. I don't know what any of these are. You can feel free to play around with it, but I'm just gonna leave it alone for now. And then reverse disc brake, gonna leave that. Throttle disc brake, also gonna leave that. The mass for the car is 1350. The sensor mass override, you can use this if you want to override where your car's center of mass is. I don't know how it's calculated, but if you want to have, say for example, a more accurate representation of it, I know that's one way you can do it. So if you know how to calculate your car's actual center of mass, then you can come over here and then do the override and then set your parameters as you would like to. And then the width of the car is 199.2, height is 111.6, drag is 0.4, and then downforce, I don't know where to get the downforce, but then that is everything for the car's setup. So we're gonna hit compile, save, and then we're gonna go to the event tick, and here by the event tick, we are going to drag in the vehicle movement component, and then drag off. And then we're going to look for set steering. So first thing I'm going to test is the steering of the car. So we're going to set it to 1. Then hit compile and save. Head back into the level. Just close up the physics asset. And then we are going to hit Alt S to simulate, and nothing happened. Now, this might happen, and if this does happen, then either you didn't set up your car properly, or what most likely happened is you missed a particular step. So this step is something that probably happens a lot. And under the mesh in the vehicle blueprint, vehicle mesh, if you just go to the search and you hit simulate, you probably forgot to check the simulate physics. So if you don't check this checkbox here, regardless of what you did with the setup, nothing's going to happen because you're not simulating anything. So with that done, I'm going to hit compile and save again, and then I'm going to head back in, and then Alt S, and then as you can see, now the car did do something. So now I'm going to check the calipers. Okay, see the caliper rotated with the wheel. I'm going to check the other one. The caliper is following the wheel's rotation, so that means the animation blueprint has been set up correctly. It is working fine. I'm going to stop the simulation, and then we are going to then set throttle input. So this is for testing. We're going to hit 0.1, then we're going to connect that, and then we're going to compile, save, head back to level, hit Alt S, and then as you can see, the car is moving, the wheels are rotating, and the calipers are completely stationary. So the animation has been set up correctly. So now we know the animation blueprint works fine. The calipers follow the wheels when you're steering, but they don't follow the wheels when the car is just moving. So now we can remove this. And what we're going to do now is set up the input so that the player can drive the car. So in the event graph, I'm going to right click and then look for IA throttle, the enhanced action events, and then we're going to drag in the event movement component, drag off, and then set throttle input, connect this to the triggered, and then from the event, the action value, connect that to the throttle, and then expand, and then we're also going to look for the completed, and then connect that as well to the execution pin, close that, and then that is it for the throttle. And then next one we're going to do is the brake. So we're going to again look for the IA brake. So set up the brake, take the vehicle movement component, Control D to duplicate it, drag off, and then look for set brake input. So we're going to set the brake input, triggered, set the execution pin, action value connected to the brake, and then we're going to duplicate the set brake input, and then we're going to expand the action event, and then we're going to drag from the completed, and then connect that to the second set brake input, and then that will be it. So we should only have an input value to the brake when the player is actually pressing it, and then when the player is not, we set the brake value to 0. So that's for the throttle and the brake. And then the last one is the steering. So right click, IA steering, and then for the steering, grab the vehicle movement component, Control D, and then we're gonna set steering input, and then for the steering, connect that to the triggered, the action value connect to the steering, and then from the completed as well, I'm gonna drag that and also connect it to the set steering input. So that is now what we have. I'm gonna compile. Oh, sorry, I forgot to connect the set brake input with the vehicle movement component. So just connect that one, and then compile and save. And then we're going to head over and play the actual level. So the vehicle is still in the level. Select the vehicle. And the details panel, I'm going to go down to auto possess player, disabled. Set this to player 0. Something I forgot to do was set up a camera because things might go over haywire. Before we do that, just head back into the blueprint, click on the vehicle mesh, click on add, and then we're going to add is a spring arm. So we're going to add a spring arm, just leave the spring arm as is. And then with the spring arm selected, we're then going to add again, and then we're going to add a camera. just the normal camera, not a cine camera or a gameplay camera, just the normal camera component. And then we're gonna head over to the viewport. So now we have the camera in the viewport as well. The control arm is over there, and then we're just gonna change some of the offsets. I think it's the socket offset. Yes, the socket. Put this to 150, and then the arm length, I'm gonna set it to 650. And then compile and save. And then head back into the level. Delete the blueprint, and then just drag the blueprint back into the level. Did I click wrong? Perchance. Okay, let's see if we play the level. Okay, seems like I got it wrong. We're gonna reset the socket. Maybe it's the target. Okay, so it is the target. Okay, so it's not the socket, it's the target. My bad on that one. I got that one wrong. So it's the target that needs to be adjusted, not the socket. So now we're gonna play the level again. Oh, by the player start. Sorry, that was completely backwards of me. Move the player. World settings, default pawn. We're gonna spawn in. Where's the car? Oh, BP tutorial. Okay. Save all. Play the level. Okay. There we go. Okay. I made a mistake there. That was my mistake. So now I'm gonna see if the car actually does work. Just give it a moment. My PC seems to be going through some struggles. Okay, so now, as you can see, the car drives, it steers, it accelerates, and then when I brake, it brakes. So that is the vehicle's complete setup. So with that, we have done a basic vehicle setup. We've set up the animation blueprint, the physics asset, and made sure that everything does in fact work. So with that, that brings us to the end of this video, and until the next one.